Never Givin Up is the first biography to chronicle the life of Milwaukee's own Al Jarreau, from his humble beginnings all the way to international fame. It was written by Kurt Dietrich, Professor Emeritus of Ripon College, who joins us now. Professor, thank you so much for joining us. My first question to you is, starting with the motivation for you writing this book, why did you decide to take this on?
Well, the first part, personally and selfishly, I had just retired. I wanted a project, and I'd written several other books about jazz. And so I'm thinking, what's next? And Al Jarreau just popped into my head because I had the connection through Ripon College to Al Jarreau. And so I checked to see if anybody else was doing this project, and no, nobody else was. And I thought, this needs to be done.
Well, talk about his early life. You got to learn a lot about him, obviously, but from his time in Milwaukee to Minnesota, the Bay Area, and even through Ripon College. I want to specifically talk about his time in college. So talk about that and anything that you find pertinent to his early life that we should know.
Well, he did grow up in the Central City in Milwaukee. He grew up on West Reservoir Street. And at that time, it was quite a mixed neighborhood, and the schools he went to, including when he graduated from Lincoln High School in 1958, it was quite mixed racially. But then he went to Ripon College, and Ripon College, when he got there, he was one of just a handful of people of color to be at the school for the whole time he was there. Now, how he got to Ripon College was by way of Badger Boys State, which is an annual event sponsored by the American Legion, and leaders from high schools all over the country, all over the state, come to Ripon, and they do a mock government sort of exercise during the week. And Al Jarreau came up in the summer of 1957. And despite the fact that certainly he was one of only a very few people of color there, his charisma, which he seemed to have had from birth, got him elected governor of Badger Boys. And that led to him being offered a scholarship to Ripon College. And even though he wasn't sure he wanted to go to college, he was talked into going to college and to Ripon College.
So talk about how, I'm sorry, I just want to know how those experiences kind of shaped his music, especially given the title, Never Givin Up. How did you come up with that title, and just how did his experiences help shape the music that he was able to make?
Well, Never Givin Up is the name of one of his songs, and frankly, it's a love song. Never give it up, never wanna give it up, even when life is over. Never give it up, never wanna give it up, even when this life is over. Never give it up, never wanna give it up, even when this life is over. I'll be content, you're gonna be content. Never wanna give it up. But the title of it just seemed right. And from the beginning and through a actually fairly slow start to his professional career as a singer, but right up until the end of his career and his life, it seemed to be a thing, is he never did give up, and he followed his muse. He continued to tour right up until shortly before his death. And he talked about, yeah, I'm going to show up every day bringing my lunch pail. And he meant he was going to keep singing and doing his thing.
So we talked about race a little bit. Why was that such a complicated topic for him with your research?
Well, again, it's hard for me to know any of why it could have been specifically, but, I just related the neighborhood he grew up in, the schools he went to in Milwaukee, but then he went to Ripon College, a very white enclave. He went to graduate school at the University of Iowa also. All along he worked. Well, in Milwaukee, he worked with white musicians most of the time, Les Zimber being a famous one that he worked with for a number of summers and his college breaks. And even when he started working professionally, He worked with white musicians a lot. Of course, he worked with black musicians a lot too. But his first duo partner, which was the first part of his real career, was Julio Martinez. He did work with the great George Duke in San Francisco after he moved to California. But there was that. But more than that, too, Al was married twice, both times to white women. One of his brothers was married to a white woman. Another brother was married to an Asian woman. And so there were those things in play also. And again, he never talked about how this made it complicated for him, but you can't help but think maybe it did.
Right, absolutely. So I ask you now, with about 30 seconds left, what should Al Jarreau's legacy be to you? How should we remember him based on this book?
Well, first and foremost, he should be remembered as a great singer. And one of the great singers of the last part of the 20th century and the early part of the 21st century. He also was a good human being, and he believed in social justice. He believed in bringing people up, that is to say, to enrich their lives, to make them feel better about themselves and one another.
Professor, thank you so much for your time and for being here on Black Nouveau.
Thanks. It was my pleasure.